Apparently, I did call it Tuesday earlier. Hey, listen, man, maybe I like doing the Sports Fix thing so much, I just wanted to add a couple days of the week. I'm like, hey, you know what? Maybe we'll go back a couple of days. People won't even notice. It'll be Sunday. People are like, yeah, it's Friday on the Sports Fix, you know? So, I don't know. Anyways, back at it, you guys. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535 is the number to call. Or you can hit us up on Facebook and Twitter and email. Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at the Sports Fix CLE. Email us, the Sports Fix at AOL.com. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Browns NFL news and the first things first. Like, I want to jump on, and you know what? I'll get into that a little bit later on. But I want to talk a little bit about we talked about this yesterday and Monday. And all week, my girl, Mary Kay Cavett over there at the Cleveland Plain Dealer, not a big fan, as you guys know, not a big, probably mutual, but I'm definitely not a big fan. And I'm sorry. I just think that Cleveland's got the most ridiculous media situation in the world, man. I mean, Cleveland Browns have the only football team in the world where literally the beat writer is the last person to actually know news instead of the first person. I am just so not used to that whatsoever. Like, I thought it was funny when they hired the new beat writers for the Cavs, Joe Varden and Chris Haynes. The first thing I saw tons of people tweet about Joe Varden was that he is the guy who's He's under it. He's got the pulse of the team. He's got the story before anybody else, and he's a really good beat writer. And I mean, obviously, Cavs season just started, so I don't know. I've been impressed with some of the pieces I've seen. Small sample size. Sounds like we're talking about Brian Hoyer. A small sample size, though. I have liked what I've seen from his writing style. But that's the exact opposite of what you get with the Browns. And this is not a personal shot, because I personally like Mary Kay. She's always been nice to me in person, but I'm sorry. I mean, every report that comes from the Browns beat writer is prefaced by as reported by Pro Football Talk or as tweeted by Adam Schefter. If I want to know what Adam Schefter tweets, I'll just follow Adam Schefter on Twitter. That drives me crazy about the beat writer situation with the Browns. But the other day, this Jason Cole from the Bleacher Report, and what did I say on Monday when that story came out? Bleacher Report is terrible as far as their credibility. I'm not saying, because I have a couple of friends that work there, I'm not saying that there's not good, credible people on Bleacher Report, because there absolutely are. But it's also the barrier to entry, it's not that high. Many people who have no business writing are able to write for a site like Bleacher Report. I mean, I'm not saying it's as easy as volunteering, but it's not as hard as getting a job either. I'll just leave that at there, and you can fill in the blanks. So, you know, and there's other sites like that. We've seen them out here where, you know, average Joe and Jane sends them an email and goes, I love the Cavs. Can I write for them? And they go, sure, might as well. I mean, that's just Joe Blow. I mean, that's cool, but you know what I mean. It's the difference between professional and unprofessional, and I'm just not a Bleacher Report guy. They've got uncredible stories. Guys can throw things out there. Basically, they're one of those sites that throws stuff up against the wall. Not everybody, but some people throw stuff up against the wall, and hopefully something sticks. And if it doesn't, it was just a rumor or a report or a third-party story or whatever. Well, anyways, that's where this is going to devolve to. But Jason Cole, remember Monday, he put out the story that everybody, and his exact words were, everybody that I've spoken to, and 3 of those people are directly from the Browns organization, have all told me that there is zero interest in renegotiating with Brian Hoyer, and Brian Hoyer has demanded that if Johnny Manziel is on this roster, he will not come back and play for the Browns. And what did I tell you guys on Monday? First off, I said that's probably one of the most ridiculous. This is the easiest one for me to say absolutely not true. I don't even have to ask anybody. I know Brian Hoyer. I'm 100% positive that he could care less what the other quarterbacks on this team are. I was telling somebody last night, a national guy from down in, was it Texas, Louisiana? He sent me a message. He goes, hey, J-Rock, this Hoyer guy, man, I'm really liking his story. So it's showing you that it's catching on nationally with fans. He goes, J-Rock, I was just listening to your show today. Man, this Hoyer guy is really catching on. Do you think the Browns are going to stick with them, or are they going to force the new guy in there and screw things up? And what do you think? Because I like this guy. And I said, no. I said, I don't buy that at all. I said, there is nothing except media reports and fan belief that says this team can't just come back with both quarterbacks next year. Now, I do agree that Brian Hoyer would definitely want the relationship to be different. He's not interested in coming in and looking in over his shoulder. Now, you have to look over your shoulder in the NFL to a certain degree, but he would gladly come back as long as it's, hey, starter, backup, simple breakup. There's no, we can go right to work from day one of training camp. There's no reason that can't happen. And that's what to be honest with you, that's what I expect to happen. I don't expect the Browns to fall all over themselves to trade either guy, and I absolutely expect them to work out some kind of a deal with Hoyer, and that it's really easy to see, but the media has got to run all over this. But you knew it was important to Brian Hoyer to squash it because it was the very first thing that he said yesterday. He said, I'm just going to tell you right now, this is garbage. There is absolutely zero truth to this story whatsoever. And that's it. That's the end of it. He said, I'm not talking about it again. You can talk to these guys here. You can talk to my agent. We'll gladly answer any questions you want. But this is the end of this garbage story. And I was so glad to see that, man, because, Mary Kay, and this is where it circles back to her, she's insisting. I've got people telling me they're talking to her about her stories. They're emailing her, and she's Jason Cole, such a reputable guy. He swears this is true. Well, he swears that he's directly talked to these people, and yet Brian Hoyer will look you in the eyes and say, this man has never talked to any of our people, and he's definitely never talked to me in my life. That's not one of those media denials that some players like to give that are so screwy that you know that they're not serious. I mean, you can't blatantly deny anything more than that. So unless Brian Hoyer is the absolute best con man in the world, and he has got every person he's ever met fooled, and he's actually a bold-faced liar and not worth the word of his bond, I'm telling you, throw that story in the garbage like I told you guys on Monday. And I was so glad to see Brian Hoyer come out and specifically address it and use such definitive terms. He did not say, talk to my agent if you've got any questions. He said, I'm telling you, it's not true. It never was true. It couldn't be farther from the truth, and I have never spoken to that man in my life. Game over. And I was very, very glad to see that. But again, this is what you get when your main beat writer in a single newspaper town, and I'll tell you, that's a bad thing to have, is a single newspaper town, because there's only one story that's told instead of the truth. It ends up being one newspaper's version of the truth. But when you got a single media town, the beat writer from the town copies and pastes and has to go off of other people because for some reason she does not have any sources within the organization. I mean, you tell me when she's broke her last story that was not first done by somebody else. It's been a while. It's what, the 80s, and she broke the story of Marty getting fired. I could believe that. Her and Tony Grossi were the man and woman back then because they were ahead of their time then, but they've been passed up now, and I don't understand. I don't understand why the fans in this town are served that. And again, I like her writing style. I mean, she can write a good piece, but that's not the point that I'm making. But that all is where this comes from, and I was glad to see that get addressed first thing yesterday. You know what the latest one that they're starting now is? Mike Pettin crapped on Blake Bortles. I've seen a couple of bloggers try to get that going today, so you may hear it start to pop out in the next 24 hours in other sports radio outlets. But yeah, that's the new narrative, is that Mike Pettin basically said that the Jaguars wasted. I saw this, and I'm like, how did you get that out of what he said? Because I listened word for word to everything he said about Blake Bortles and the Jaguars drafting him. But there's people trying to make it sound like Mike Pettin said that the Jags wasted a draft pick on taking Bortles with the number 4, and I'm like, that is not. I mean, I guess if you wanted to run with some real creative license of what he said, you could try to go there, but I don't see how. He was basically just saying their evaluation process of it, and he was giving kudos to Jacksonville for saying they had the whole league fooled. Nobody saw them taking him that right there early in the draft, which is a little funny because a lot of mock drafts had Bortles going to Jacksonville. I had Bortles going to Jacksonville for one reason: tickets. When you got a hometown story, as we're seeing right here, when you got the hometown rookie, imagine if John Manziel was from Cleveland instead of coming in from out of town. Take the Brian Hoyer story, combine it with the Johnny Manziel story. That's what the Blake Bortles story is in Jacksonville, if it works. That's what it is, because you got the guy who was already the college hero down there, and now he's going to come save the franchise and all of that. But so I knew that. I said, man, it's the same reason I thought Manziel was a money shot for Dallas, because of tickets, because that's it is an entertainment business that we're in. But anyway, so I was not surprised but I just thought they may get him. They may have to flip back up like Cleveland did. I didn't know that they would take him 4, which is what Pettin was saying yesterday. But I mean, I really saw him to Jacksonville was one of the few that I saw coming there. So anyways, but yeah, so don't be surprised if you start hearing that coming out. Is it now Mike Pettin's on the bulletin board or something because he dared to come out and say that's not what he said at all, guys. You got to read it and hear it for yourself. Remember, that's our rule, our lesson here every day. Read it for yourself, see it for yourself, hear it for yourself before you go running with somebody's crazy story that they're trying to tell. Caller, you're up on the Sports Fix.
J-Rock Daddy.
LG, baby, what's happening?
If you didn't see it or read it on TMZ, it ain't true. That's all I got to tell you, man. It's 2014. You can't rely on anything a Browns beat writer's saying. You got to go to TMZ, and I find nothing on TMZ about Brian Hoyer talking contract. So we know it ain't true.
But you know what I'm saying. Listen, I feel bad a little bit because I'm not directly.
Let me tell you my take on this whole thing, J-Rock Daddy. People get bored. They can't stand Cleveland having a little winning season going on right now. Let's face it, Brian Hoyer 6-2 as a Browns starter. Just imagine if this guy would have stayed healthy last year. Who knows? We may have had a winning season. But I got to tell you this right now. The Cleveland Browns aren't stupid. We got a front office right now that knows something about the game of football, J-Rock. And when was the last time we had a guy in the GM spot that actually was a fairly decent football player in the NFL? So here's what I want to tell you, man. I don't care about Johnny Manziel right now.
No.
We got Brian Hoyer at the helm. This team's rallying around Brian Hoyer. I don't care what anybody thinks about dividing the locker room or whatever. As long as Hoyer keeps cheering his teammates on and inspiring these guys to go out and give 110% on the field, which is what I've seen in every game Brian Hoyer played so far this year, there's not going to be no locker room division. That's number one. Number two, Manziel's an unproven commodity, J-Rock. Let's talk the Browns' number one, not number one, but even first-round draft picks over the last few years. None of these guys that were drafted in the first round of the NFL draft for the Cleveland Browns have really came in and made a big statement. These guys are free agents, traded, this guy, that guy. That's the people. We got a walk-on running back that came in and is setting all kinds of things on fire for the Cleveland Browns. So you can't even fathom the idea that you'd get rid of a successful guy like Brian Hoyer. God help him, let him stay healthy for this season so we could really be judging his performance over a 16 games played instead of, what we saw last year and then the injury. You know what I'm saying, J-Rock? We can't think that guys that know something about the game of football are going to turn their backs on Brian Hoyer. That's not going to happen. If this guy's still showing the leadership abilities, plus a guy like Tom Brady has nothing but praise for Brian Hoyer. You think guys that know something about football aren't going to renegotiate some kind of deal with Brian Hoyer? Now, let's face it. I don't think they're going to give him Joe Flacco, Peyton Manning, or those Drew Brees kind of money. But you know what? They're going to make a nice offer to Brian Hoyer. Brian Hoyer doesn't seem like a guy that's going to hold out for $22 million a season. He seems like a reasonable guy who wants to play in Cleveland. I say Haslam gives him a reasonable offer. We're going to see Brian Hoyer re-signed with the Cleveland Browns because I could care less how many jerseys with number 2 are sold. That's an unproven commodity, J-Rock.
Brother, let me tell you something. Since you mentioned jerseys, you just wait and you tell me how many number 6 jerseys have been sold by the end of this season if they keep playing well, because I can tell you that it'll be a pretty decent number.